should be live now. Hare Krishna, and welcome to another episode in Lives of the Vaishnava Saints. I'm your host, Chhatratma Das. Are we live out there? Haribo. If I get a little feedback in the chat room for acknowledging that all of our tech stuff is working the way it should, from our side it looks like it is. So, there we go. Yep. Okay, great. Nice to see everyone here. Kremlin69, Bhakti Jeff, Sharnay108, Bhaktin Carol. Nice to have all of you back. Anyone else that's out there listening, we encourage you to join our chat room. It's a wonderful way to stay in touch with us and let us know where you're listening from. Looks like we've got somebody here all the way from New South Wales, Australia. Great to have you back. Okay. Well, I've been on summer sabbatical, as many of you know, and I want to thank Akrura Prabhu for keeping my seat warm here at Krishna.com while I was away. And as I start, I also want to give a personal thanks of friendship to two very dear friends of mine, Dhruva Maharaj and Pundarik Vedaniti. These are both devotees that live here in Alachua and are virtual walking storehouses of nectar. So I want to thank both of them for their encouragement and, just feedback and everything as I work these programs together. And I want to thank the staff here at Krishna.com also, especially my studio technician, Abhay Prabhu. He's been very steady here. And I'd like to remind all of you that Krishna.com brings you these programs free, right into your home without any kind of commercial support or advertising or commercial content on the website. On Facebook, if you like something, you show a thumbs up logo, or an icon. So here, if you like something, we ask you to show your support and help support the activities of these wonderful devotional programs that Krishna.com does. So, let me just, is there a way to, there we go, I can just put this right. Bingo. All right, there we are. So this past summer, I spent part of my time in Poland at the Woodstock Festival in Europe. More to the point, I spent time at Krishna's Village of Peace, which is an absolutely amazing preaching program organized by His Holiness Indradumna Swami. And one of my services there was in the question and answer tent. In fact, this was like my favorite, my main service. It's really great. And all kinds of questions come from these kids at this festival, not just, matter of fact, none of what's the pain on your head and why do you wear a dress, but really thoughtful questions. And one question that regularly came up is, what is the role of women in Krishna consciousness? Well, this week is Ladies' Week. Today, of course, is the appearance day of Sita Thakurani, the consort and wife of Advaita Acharya. Tomorrow is the appearance day of Lalita Shaki, the most prominent of Radhika's gopis. And then Thursday is the appearance day of Srimati Radharani herself. So, very, very wonderful week for the ladies, or for those of us that have spiritual aspirations in that direction. Now, I'm no scholar of Gopi Leela, and I would not even dare approach the subject of our most beloved Srimati Radharani. However, since Gaura Leela has been the primary focus of this program and the presentations we've done, I will take this opportunity this evening to speak about Sita Thakurani. One thing, Bhaktin Carol has indicated we've got good audio, good video. If anybody is having any problem, we do have a live chat room connection here. Please let me know what's going on. Those of you that may have questions as we go through the presentation, we encourage you can put them down, or at the top of the hour, at the end of this presentation, we will take questions in and try and answer whatever questions may be posed or subjects you'd like to bring up. So just a little side note there. So Sita Thakurani. In the village of Narayanapur, this is a small village in the area of Mayapur, Navadvip. There's a very pure-hearted, saintly couple by the name of Sri Nrsimha Baduri and his wife Nrsimhi. I think maybe they might be Nrsimha Bhaktas. His name's Nrsimha, her name's Nrsimhi. So one day, Nrsimha was out collecting tulsi and flowers for the worship of his deity in their home. Being simple-hearted and very worshipable Brahmins of a very good caliber, they had deities in the home, of course. This is subject that we've spoken about many times, the importance of grihastas having deity worship within the home. Not only does Srila Prabhupada speak about this, Krishnadas Kaviraj mentions this throughout the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sanatana Goswami speaks emphatically on this in the Hari Bhakti Vilasa. It's a very important principle. We won't go into that tonight because in an hour from now we'll go back to talking about Sita. So at any rate, Nrsimha Badudi had this very nice worship in his home. So he was out collecting tulsi and flowers. Now, while he was out, he happened by a lake near the village. And in this lake were the most fragrant of lotus flowers. As a matter of fact, these lotus flowers were so fragrant that their presence permeated, the fragrance of the flowers permeated the entire village. You couldn't help but smell the fragrance from these lotus flowers. So he thought to himself, well, this would be very wonderful if I could collect some of these lotus flowers and take them back to my lords. So as he was collecting from the side, he came across one particularly beautiful lotus flower. And not only particularly beautiful because it had 100 petals on it, but particularly fragrant. Now, someone may say, oh, but if he's smelling the flowers, how is he going to offer them to the Lord? You cannot help but smell the flowers. Sometimes when I'm out in my garden picking tulsi manjaris, I have tulsi manjaris growing in my garden for Giridhari, and you can't help but smell the fragrance of the manjaris. You can't help but when you have a handful of marigolds you've collected, the fragrance comes. But the mentality is what will determine whether that act of selling them is sense gratification or not. Oh, this is so wonderful, I'm enjoying this so much. Or, oh, this is a very wonderful fragrance, I can't wait to offer this to the Lord. The senses are there. The senses engage themselves without our desire even. This is part of the problem of being in the material world. This is part of the problem of having these senses, is they're going on their own. But when they achieve the result of what they're aspiring after, if we dovetail our consciousness of that to Krishna, that will change the entire dynamics. So in this way, Nrsimha was collecting this lotus flower. 100 petals, very beautiful. And as he brought it towards him to put in his hand with the rest of them, he saw the most amazing thing. Inside of this lotus flower was a little baby girl the size of a thumb. Just incredible. It describes that she was as beautiful as a lightning bolt, that her effulgence that emanated from her was so brilliant that Nrsimha assumed that she must be Lakshmi Devi herself. So he thought to himself, I'll take this jewel of a girl home to my wife. Now, interesting thing, his wife Nrsimha happened to be pregnant. And she happened to be giving birth at the time he was out collecting flowers. Now, of course, in the modern day, it's quite popular for the husband to be there at the birth of the child, and if that works, then that's fine. But it wasn't so much the standard in Vedic culture. The husband was not there when the child was born. There's some injunctions on this, but anyway, that's another subject. The point is that when he returned home, he presented this lotus flower with this beautiful baby girl to his wife. Now, his wife had just given birth to a baby girl as well. So they spoke privately. He privately showed her the girl, and they decided they would present the two girls as twin sisters. His wife said, if this child stays in our home, it will certainly be the mercy of the Lord upon us. And at that moment, the girl from the lotus flower immediately grew to the size of an infant child, the same as her sister. And the two girls became known as Sita and Shri. And it was understood that they were twin sisters to everyone in the village. So, of course, they grew into very, very wonderful girls. There are many, many pastimes associated with their activities. The jewels of the village, if you will. You can just imagine the appearance of these two girls and the beauty that they had. So, in this way, so many activities. One time, their father, being a dutiful Brahmin of very well-known reputation, would commonly host sadhus and saintly persons as they came through the village. So one time he was hosting a very well-known sannyasi of great mystic and yogic prowess. And he was very, very famous for this. The interesting thing was that when the two sisters came before him, he was completely incapable of focusing on any of his yogic performances. He was completely incapable of manifesting any of his mystic abilities. And he realized that my inability in this regards has never manifested itself before. This can only be due to the influence of these two girls. So, understanding them to be great saintly persons of some stature beyond him, he took durba grass, a very worshipable type of grass, along with kusa grass, and placed it in his mouth and bowed before them, offering selected prayers. So the two girls, they decided to have a little bit of fun. So they said to him, "My dear sir, why are you worshipping us? You are a greatly advanced and elevated sannyasi, a powerful yogi. Why should you worship us?" And he said to them, he said, "I understand the two of you to be the personification of Lakshmi Devi herself." He said to them, he said, "I beg from you and pray that you please give me liberation and allow me to attain the same form as Lord Vishnu in Vaikuntha." So Sita Thakurani, she said to him, she said, "Liberation? Did you say liberation? Why, liberation is the maidservant of bhakti. Bhakti is the source of all supreme spiritual service. One who gets liberation becomes very proud, and eventually they fall down from that liberated stage to take up mundane material activities. Liberation, you ask?" And then Sri said, "Liberation? To have the same form as Vishnu? This is a most horrible and abominable thought to one who has achieved bhakti. Let me ask you something, my dear sir. Is it better to be the honey or to drink the honey?" Very, very nice phrase. Is it better to be the honey or to drink the honey? The devotees of Lord Krishna, they derive ecstasy many, many times greater than that of the Lord himself by their service to the Lord. And you're asking for such liberation to have the same form? So they continued in this way to explain all of the different principles of devotional service to this sannyasi, and he eventually humbled himself and in due course became a very pure Vaishnava. So very, very nice benediction and mercy they bestowed. There was another time they were with their father, Nrsimha, and they had heard of a wonderful, wonderful devotional festival filled with great Harinam and filled with all types of sadhu sangha and filled with all types of devotional singing, and so they wanted very much to go. It was across the Ganga on the other side. So when they came there with their father, that time the Ganga was very, very unsettled. It was very windy, and there were waves and whitecaps, and no boatman would go out. So all the boatmen refused. "No, we are sorry, we cannot take you across." So the two girls did the most amazing thing. They each took an arm of their father, and they walked across the Ganga to the other side to take part in this wonderful festival. Now, of course, many atheists and non-believers, thinking, "Oh, these girls can do it, so can we," they also began to walk across the water, and as soon as they got to the deep parts, very quickly swam and flapped about trying to save themselves. And all the people would laugh at them. So these are just some of the amazing younger pastimes. Now, one day, Advaitacharya Prabhu was bathing at one of the ghats on the Ganga. Now, we should mention that this particular day is not the particular pastimes of Advaitacharya. We spoke about that at other times, and so we're not going to go into his entire background. But he was nonetheless residing in Mayapur. At that time, he had two houses. Actually, no, I take that back. At that time, he was just residing in Mayapur. He hadn't moved to Shankapur yet. So, at any rate, so Advaitacharya was there at the Ganga taking his bath, and Nrsimha Bodhari Baduri and his two daughters, Sita and Shri, came forward. And when they came forward, they arrived at this bathing ghat by boat. And the two girls both saw Advaitacharya at the same time. And seeing Advaitacharya, Sita thought, such a pure form is not found in any human being. Why, his bodily luster defeats the effulgence and luster of gold. Why, he has arms all the way to his knees. His hands appear like lotus petals, lotus flowers, and the fingers on his hands appear to be the petals of the champak flower. I thought about this because I happen to grow champaks at my house. I have 5 or 6 champak plants. They're pretty common around here. And the interesting thing is that the petal of the champak flower is fine and long, and the tips of it are lightly colored. So you can just imagine the fingers looking like a champak flower. And she said, the soft lotus feet that he has make my heart feel very jubilant. So this was Sita. Shri, she looked at him, she thought, oh, she actually said to her sister, she said, I see that the storehouse of elegance has manifested itself on the bank of the Ganga. Millions of moons have descended to present themselves here in front of us. Such a divine fragrance is coming from his body. I cannot believe it. Matchless handsomeness such as is coming from his face cannot be found anywhere in the 3 worlds. So they both said to each other, we must attain him as our husband or give up our life. So, in this way, Nrsimha introduced himself to Advaitacharya, and Advaitacharya invited them to his home, and Nrsimha and the 2 girls came to Advaitacharya's home. He arranged to receive them nicely, gave them some prasadam. They spoke for a bit, and in due course of time, through the arrangement. Now, when Nrsimha arrived there, I should mention that many of the Vaishnavas from Navadvip were there. Srivas was there. Who else does it mention? Murari Gupta. There were so many of the devotees that were present there, and they engaged in kirtan. Now, you may remember that Advaitacharya was instrumental in Mahaprabhu's appearance. He was so enthusiastic about bringing the holy name, bringing the Lord to descend on this planet. And he was engaged in these activities that would bring him long before the Lord's appearance. Now, this is another story, going back to Advaita. So, at any rate, in due course of time, through the arrangements of Sham Pandit, the marriage took place between Advaitacharya and the 2 girls, Sita and Shri. They were both married to him. Now, we're concentrating today on Sita Thakurani, so just a little bit more in her direction. Actually, it mentions in all the Shastras that Sita Thakurani is to be worshipped just as much as Sachi Devi, because she is just like the mother of the universe in that way. She's always understood to be the eternal wife of Advaitacharya, and as a result of this, worshipable by everyone within the 3 worlds. This is an amazing statement. She's worshipable by everyone within the 3 worlds. The marriage took place in Pulyanagara, which is one of the local villages in the area there. And after the marriage was finished, then Advaitacharya moved to Shantipur and set up his residence there. He actually had 2 houses. He had a smaller house in Navadvip, and he had his main home in Shantipur. This is where Haridas Thakur came to live with him, and that wonderful pastime of him receiving Haridas Thakur and giving him the first offering of the Shraddha ceremony. He was the most prominent Brahmin in Shantipur. He was one of the most prominent Brahmins in the entire Navadvip Mayapur area. So he went with his wives and they moved to Shantipur and lived there. Sita Thakurani herself, it explains, was always absorbed in Vatsalya Prema for Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gaura Sundar Prabhu at this point, not Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu yet. And out of parental concern, she used to always instruct Jagannath Mishra and Sachimata how to properly care for the young boy. Advaitacharya and Sita Thakurani were a bit older than Jagannath Mishra and Sachimata. It doesn't exactly say how much. It's one of my, as you may remember from previous broadcasts, one of my hopes and desires to be able to chart out the exact ages of all these Vaishnavas in correlation to each other. It's sometimes a difficult task because the Bhakti Ratnakar may say one thing, and then the Gaura Gunadesha Dipika may say another, and then in the Gaura, Parishad Chatravali, you'll find another indication. So, different things, but it's one of those things that I'll work on, and before I leave this body, I'll conclude it and present it to all of you. So, at any rate, she was a bit older, and so therefore she would speak in a very instructive manner how to care for the boy and what to do. Actually, it mentions that in Dwapara Yuga, during the pastimes of Lord Krishna, that she was present in the house of Nanda, and at that time did the same thing, gave Nanda and Jasoda instructions on how they should care for their child there. So, Krishnadas Kaviraj describes that when Sachimata gave birth to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when the Lord invented himself, special attention is given by Krishnadas Kaviraj to the position of Sita Thakurani during this time. It mentions that on the eve of the Lord's descent, Jagannath Mishra, he began to see all the different signs indicating, and you remember that Haridas Thakur and Advaitacharya could understand from Shantipur that the child had been born, and they were jubilant with great, great satisfaction and bliss that the Lord had appeared himself. So, hearing the news of the appearance of the Lord in this way, they went to the river and bathed. You will probably remember that at that time it was a full moon. The Lord appeared on the full moon, and it was an eclipse also. And during the eclipse, many people were very concerned about a lot of different ritualistic activities, and one of the common things is to go and take bath in a holy river and chant the names of Hari. So during the Lord's appearance, this is what was going on. Everyone was calling out the holy name of the Lord. And Haridas Thakur and Advaitacharya were especially so jubilant in this way. And so then the next day, after this was finished, this was the night before, so then the next day he sent Sita Thakurani to the home of Jagannath Mishra and Sachimata. And he sent her to see, as he described, this jewel of jewels. And they brought presents, different types of presents that were suitable for an auspicious thing, gorochana and fresh cut patty, and different types of grains were brought, and gold and jewels and different types of silk and cloth and things of this nature. All of this was brought by Sita Thakurani, who was carried in a palanquin, and then a separate palanquin for all the presents and everything like that. So, now I mentioned a few minutes ago the Gaura Prasad Charitvali, excuse me. It mentions that during Krishna Lila, that Sachimata was Purnamasi, and she was the mother of Sandipani Muni, and the grandmother of, as a result, of Madhu Mangal and Nandi Mukhi, and a disciple of Narada Muni. So very exalted connections there on all sides. Very, very wonderful. Now, when she visited Jagannath Mishra and Sachimata's house, Krishnadas Kaviraj gives a very detailed explanation, which I'd like to read from Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's interesting because between Vrindavan Das Thakur, Krishnadas Kaviraj, and Lochan Das Thakur's Chaitanya Mangala, Chaitanya Bhagavat, and Chaitanya Charitamrita, you get a very complete picture of the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One author will focus more on one activity, another author will focus more on another particular pastime, and then a third author will not touch that at all but bring in a different pastime that's not mentioned. So in this way, the three of them together reading these books gives a very, very wonderfully complete picture. So Krishnadas Kaviraj, he mentions the following. One day, shortly after Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was born, Advaitacharya's wife Sita Devi, who was worshipable by the whole world, taking permission of her husband, went to see that topmost child with all kinds of gifts and presents. She brought different kinds. This is a good point, that when we go to see someone that's just given birth, or a couple that's just had a child, it's always good to bring presents. This is the proper etiquette. Bring some presents for the child. She brought different kinds of golden ornaments, including bangles for the hands, for the armlets, necklaces, and bangles for the anklets. There was also tiger nails set in gold, This is a very auspicious thing for a child to wear, because having a tiger's claw helps to offset any ill influences or bad difficulties a child may have, astrological thing like that. There was also tiger claws set in gold, waist decorations of silk and lace, ornaments for the legs and for the hands, nicely printed silken saris, as a gift for the mother, of course, and a child's garment, also made of silk. Many other riches, including gold and silver coins, were also presented for the child. Now, we might imagine that these gold and silver coins would have been put towards something beneficial, not given for the child to play. This is one of the discretions of being a parent, not necessarily giving everything to the kid that's given to the kid right then. Many other riches were also presented at this time. Riding in a palanquin covered with cloth and accompanied by maidservants, Sita Thakurani came to the house of Jagannath Mishra, bringing with her many auspicious articles, such as fresh grass, paddy, gorochino, which is a type of golden pigment, turmeric, kumkum, and sandalwood. All these presentations filled many large baskets. Now, it's important to note culturally that Sita didn't just walk through the streets. She didn't just, okay, I'm going to go see a friend and get out and just go. Okay. She was a woman of very, very elevated spiritual and material position. And so she was carried in a covered palanquin, and escorted by her maidservants. This was the tradition. And this was a way of respecting her position and not coming in contact with lower class persons that might insult her, things such as we commonly see in the streets today. You know, you can walk down the street with a woman by your side, a girlfriend, a wife, you know, your sister, your mother, and lewd and lascivious persons on the street may make all kinds of unpleasant comments. This is a very unfortunate reality of Kali Yuga. Someone very close to me had this happen recently. So, in this day and age, it's a very common thing. And, as a matter of fact, many women take it as a compliment to be greeted in this way. But in these wonderful times, we see that Mother Sita was escorted by palanquin, covered with maidservants, given proper respect in that way. So, at any rate, when Sita Thakurani came to the house of Sachi Devi, bringing with her many kinds of edibles, of course, someone has an illness in the family, or someone passes away, or someone gives birth to a child, all the ladies send good things to eat, because the mother is a bit too either exhausted from childbirth and taking care of the child, or in distress by the loss of a family member, or just out of appreciation, you bring some nice food for the family, like this. So many different types of edibles and dresses and other gifts were brought, and Sita Devi was astonished, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, to see the beauty of this newly born child. She had anticipated that except for a difference in color, this child was directly Lord Krishna of Gokula himself. Seeing the transcendental bodily effulgence of the child, each of his limbs constructed full of auspicious signs and resembling a form of gold, Sita Thakurani was internally very, very much pleased. And because of her maternal affection, she felt as if her heart were melting. You see this sometimes when a grandmother or a very, very dear close friend will come and see the new baby. Oh, they just feel such satisfaction, such happiness. And you can imagine knowing that this child to be the Lord himself manifesting, and how beautiful he must be, how melted and sweet it must have felt, how melted her heart would have been, and how sweet it must have been for Sita Thakurani to have this opportunity to see the Lord just after he appeared like that. She blessed the newborn child by placing fresh grass and paddy on his head and saying, "May you be blessed with the long duration of life." But, being afraid of ghosts and witches, she gave the child the name Nimai. You remember his mother's birth house, the birthing house, was underneath a neem tree. And so for that reason, neem is very antiseptic, and neem is known to not only medicinally cleanse the body, but to subtly cleanse the body from ill influences. So because he was born under that neem tree, she gave him the name Nimai. And this being a remembrance of the neem tree would help to dispel any type of ill influences. Being very kind in that way.
So Sita Thakurani named him?
Sita Thakurani gave him that name.
Oh, okay.
He had many names, but Nimai was given to him by Sita Thakurani. On the day that the mother and son took garments, on the day the mother and son took their bath and left the maternity house, Sita Thakurani again gave them all kinds of presents and gifts and honored Jagannath Mishra. I mean, after all, the father is a part of the equation here, so she brought some goodies for him too. Then Sita Thakurani, in turn, being honored by Mother Sachi and Jagannath Mishra, was greatly happy within her mind and returned home. This is a conclusion of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's statements. Now, this is important, that not only did she come and bring gifts and presents for the baby, bring foodstuffs and all types of presents for the mother, she bought things for the father, but they in turn appreciated her and gave presents to her as well. This is the loving exchanges that Rupa Goswami speaks about in his Upadeshamrita, giving gifts and exchanging gifts with other Vaishnavas. This is one of the 6 types of loving exchanges. And so this is an important thing. Just like in the Vaishnava tradition, on one's birthday, one may well get presents, it's a common thing, but one also gives presents. Gives some prasadam or gives some gift to others. According to their status and finances and position, they can do like that. It's very, very common on your birthday to sponsor a feast at the temple or to sponsor distribution of prasadam or something of that nature like that. So, very, very wonderful. So, it mentions then, back to our narrative, it mentions that from that day forth, that Sita Thakurani would regularly come from Shantipur to Mayapur, and in order to spend time with Sachimata and help her understand how to care for the new baby and take care, because you will remember that Advaita and Sita Thakurani and Shri, between them, they had 6 children. So 3 sons that were said to be proper Vaishnavas, following in the line of Advaitacharya, and 3 that were a little less so. So in this way, she gave many different instructions to Sachimata and Jagannath Mishra on raising the child and properly taking care of him. And after helping this way, then she returned back to Shantipur and then stay for some time and then later come back like that. So back and forth she was traveling in this way, When it came time for the child's first birthday ceremony, Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Devi let the most worshipable of personalities, Sita Thakurani, be the one to give the child his first new clothes. Srila Prabhupada mentions that although his father was not a very wealthy man, he was well-to-do enough that whenever there was a proper occasion, such as a birthday or a religious celebration, there would be new cloth for each of the children. So this is a tradition on the birthday to give new cloth, and so this is an honor who gets to give the first present, the first cloth, and they would defer this to Sita Thakurani. Now it mentions that Sita Thakurani and Sachimata were of one mind. Now what do you think that mind would have been? The baby Nimai was their life and their soul. Every day they would be completely absorbed in how to properly care for the child. What was going on in the child's life? Whether he was here or there, was he comfortable? Did he need something? And this they were completely absorbed. Actually, it mentions also a little bit later, I was going to mention, but Srivas Pandit's wife, Malini Devi, also was of the same mind. She was constant. She was older, like Advaitacharya and Sita Thakurani. Srivas and Malini were older also, almost like grandparents, you might say. You'll remember that when Nityananda was living with them, they were quite elderly, and some of the very amazing pastimes of Lord Nityananda took place in that home. At any rate, it mentions that these 3 ladies were completely absorbed in serving Lord Chaitanya like a mother. I mean, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had 3 mothers for all practical purposes. Sita Thakurani, his own mother, Sachimata, and then Malini Devi. Like this. It mentions that in Jagannath Mishra's home, that this divine child, Nimai Pandit, was able to increase the pleasure of his parents, the perfection of their eyes, the satisfaction of the mind of all the devotees that came to visit. Just like the waxing moon gives satisfaction upon seeing it in this way. So in due course of time, you'll remember that before Nimai Pandit was born, he had an older brother, Vishvarupa. And after several years, when Jagannath Mishra's son Vishvarupa grew up, he decided to take sannyas. This was somewhat under the advice, influence, association of Advaita Acharya and other factors, but he took sannyas. This caused great agony and grief to Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Devi, that their son had left home in this way. Our first generation of devotees was in the Krishna consciousness movement. Some of our parents were greatly aggrieved at our leaving and joining Srila Prabhupada. There were many different exchanges with some of our parents and Prabhupada, but it was a great suffering for them. Some of it passed, some of it is still there. But at any rate, the same type of suffering on a much more spiritual realm, of course, was there with Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Devi. And at that time, Advaita Acharya sent Sita Thakurani to console the two of them, and it mentions that she was a great shelter to Sachimata, and for 4 days after Mahaprabhu left, she stayed with Sachimata, Sita Thakurani did, and consoled her and took care of her, and just was a associate for her at this most difficult time of the departure of her son Vishvarupa. So, after exhibiting his childhood pastimes, Nimai Pandit, eventually the Lord progressed into his Kaishori age and his youthful pastimes. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, at one time during this would be when he was still younger, and Nityananda had come to join him. We're kind of jumping along in gaps here because we're bringing in different personalities without giving their entire background. And many of you know the background of these different persons. But at any rate, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had begun to associate with Nityananda. And so one time they went to the home of Advaita Acharya in Shantipur. And while they were there, they asked if they could have a festival. And they wanted to perform Krishna Kirtan all day and all throughout the night. This was their desire. So the downright spiritually beautiful nature of the subject of such a festival has been described very nicely by Parameshwar Das Thakur in his Sri Parakalpacharu. Now, those of you with a good memory will remember that simply by uttering the name of Parameshwar Das Thakur, one can get love of God. So in unison, everyone out there, 1, 2, 3, Parameshwar Das Thakur. This is directly from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, in Parameshwar Das Thakur's book, Sri Parakalpacharu, he mentions the following about this visit by Mahaprabhu and Nityananda to Advaita Acharya. One day the Lord laughed, having arrived in the temple of Sri Advaita, and thus the son of Sachi took his seat there. Along with Nityananda, Advaita sat down as well, and the two of them began playfully assessing the idea of having a great festival. Hearing this, Sita Thakurani entered the room smiling. At that time, in sweet words which would have made the mind of those who heard it very blissful, the son of Sachi ruled that there must be a great festival. He said, "Listen, Sita Thakurani, we shall extend invitations to all the Vaishnavas of different areas who live near here. Let whoever hears the sound of our song resounding throughout the air come and join us in this kirtan. We shall invite one and all to this kirtan festival." Saying this, Sri Gauranga began to give orders to the devotees. "You invite all the Vaishnavas. You get the mridungas and kartals prepared. You make sandalwood paste and a guru for distribution to all the guests when they come. Have everything ready at the bathing ghat to receive everyone that comes by boat." Carrying out these assignments very expertly and garlanding all the devotees of flower garlands, the devotees gathered together in a circle for an uproarious kirtan. Hearing the words of Mahaprabhu, the devotees followed his orders with great affection, collecting garlands, sandalwood, betel, ghee, honey, milk, and everything essential for worshipping the Lord and his devotees. The different gifts and fragrant articles for the devotees and the Lord were then distributed in proper ways. The kirtan began at midday. After that, everyone in the area was chanting the names of Hari Hari, and the mridanga made the whole kirtan very auspicious. Thus swims Parameshwar Das Thakur in the Rasik pastimes of the Lord's kirtan. Now, why did I mention this particular pastime? Because it takes place at the home of Advaitacharya, whose wife is Sita Devi. Now, if you, as the husband, invite many devotees to your home, who's going to be arranging everything? The wife, at least with some help. But so we see that at the beginning of this, Sita comes in and hears this and smiles very sweetly, thinking this to be a wonderful idea. Excuse me. Thinking this to be a wonderful idea and very excited about the concept of a festival being here. So she has to assist in arranging, okay, put the garlands here and the sandalwood here, and okay, bring the honey and milk here to the kitchen, and all these different things. So in this way, she was conducting all the activities that were bringing about the manifestation of this incredible kirtan. So after some time of these different activities of the Lord, he went to Gaya. And then the real true purpose and reason of his appearance began to manifest when he returned. He would gather all the devotees at the house of Srivasangam, and the real kirtan party for which he inaugurated his appearance began to take place. Now, at this time, Advaitacharya would come from Shantipur to Mayapur, and he would come with Sita Devi, and they would engage in worshiping the Lord with all types of different paraphernalia. Now, this is a very wonderful time for Advaitacharya. I'm going to take a little side trip here, so bear with me. This is a very wonderful time for Advaitacharya, because Advaitacharya, you may remember, is the disciple of Madhavendra Puri. Madhavendra Puri is the guru of Ishvar Puri. Ishvar Puri is the guru of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This makes Advaitacharya the godbrother of Ishvar Puri, who's the guru of Mahaprabhu. Now, the general tradition, the proper Vaishnava etiquette, is that one worships the godbrother of the guru on the same level as the guru, provided, of course, that that godbrother is qualified. Now, if that godbrother happens to be a Ramachandra Puri type of godbrother, as we see from the Chaitanya Charitamrita pastimes in Jagannath Puri, one may not engage in worship. But the point is that one should respect the godbrother of the guru in the same way one respects the guru. So, this was the nature of the relationship that Mahaprabhu had with Advaitacharya. Advaitacharya simply wanted to be able to worship Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for which he knew him to be. And this is one of those opportunities where he was able to do that. As the Lord began to manifest his Navadvip Kirtan Leela upon returning from Gaya, then Advaitacharya received him with his wife, and they performed a grand worship and arti and foot bathing and garlands and sandalwood paste and so on and so on. Very, very much to the satisfaction of Advaitacharya. After that, Lord Chaitanya didn't let this type of exchange come from Advaitacharya. He was always glorifying him. He was always touching his feet. He was always trying to... And Advaitacharya simply wanted... He saw that the Lord is chastising this one. The Lord is being strict with this one. The Lord is giving instruction to that one. Why does he not treat me in this way? This is all I desire. So, of course, we know this wonderful pastime. Advaitacharya returned to Shantipur. He said, "You're giving your mercy to everyone except me. So I'm leaving." So he returned to Shantipur. And when he returned to Shantipur, he thought long and hard. And he decided, I know how I can get the Lord's mercy. He's always respecting me. But if I do something that will anger him, he will not respect me. Now, Advaitacharya understood very clearly the Supreme Personality of Godhead was greatly angered by the preaching of Mayavad philosophy. This insidious philosophy that the living entity and the Lord are one, that everything is Maya and everything in creation is the same. That's a real brief explanation. So, Advaitacharya began to set out into... Now remember, in Shantipur, he was a greatly elevated Brahmana. He was respected as the senior member of the community. And so, in Shantipur, he went out publicly to the prominence where he would sit and give the Bhagavatams previously, and began to espouse the teachings of the Mayavadi point of view. With great conviction and with great knowledge, he began to speak in this way. Well, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard this, he began outraged. Advaitacharya is teaching this philosophy? I must go to Shantipur and find out for myself. So he went. And then when he arrived there, of course, we know that he did find Advaitacharya preaching this way, and he treated him very harshly. He actually beat him and chastised him very, very strongly. And in this way, Advaitacharya was very, very happy, because finally he was getting that type of treatment he wanted. So, but he had this opportunity in the beginning of his association with the Lord by this worshipping of him with Sita Devi upon his return from Gaya. So then we know that gradually, in due course of time, the Lord left his Navadvip pastimes and wished to deliver all the fallen souls of this world. So he took sannyas, and he turned his face towards Vrindavan and madly ran to go to Vrindavan. But of course, we know that he didn't get to go to Vrindavan. And so when he left again, Sita Thakurani went to console Sachimata. By this point, Mahaprabhu's father, Sachimata's husband, Jagannath Mishra, had departed from this world. Sachimata's oldest son had taken sannyas. Now her second son had taken sannyas. She had nothing left. So Sita Thakurani went and gave her that solace and stayed with her and tried to comfort her as she, was plunged into a ocean of separation. In her own mind, the sky had forever darkened, and she lay on the ground with no other satisfaction or pleasure in this world. So her only help and satisfaction during this time was the association of Sita Thakurani. So eventually, being bound by the ropes of love for his mother, Mahaprabhu was unable to go to Vrindavan and returned to Shantipur. And when he arrived in Shantipur, Advaitacharya and Sita Thakurani describes they felt as if their life had returned. You can imagine daily they were associating with Nimai Pandit since he was a little baby into a youth and into a young man, and then he takes sannyas and goes away. There's amazingly heartfelt, painful descriptions given in the Bhakti Ratnakar about the feelings of the residents of Navadvip once Mahaprabhu left. So Sita Thakurani and Advaitacharya, they were very, very happy to have Mahaprabhu back, and he returned to their home in Shantipur. And in that very motherly way that Sita Thakurani had always had, she prepared the Lord's favorite foods. Now, he had fasted for 4 days during his travels. And the first prasad he accepted, Lord Gaurasunda, the first prasad he accepted was at the hand of Sita Thakurani. So eventually we know that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided he couldn't live there in the Navadvip Shantipur area. It was too close to his family, to his home like that. So he moved and kept his residence in Jagannath Puri. And that every year, led by Shivananda Sain, who we've spoken about many, many times, the devotees would travel en masse to go to Puri for the Rath Yatra festival and to get the association of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. During these occasions, Advaitacharya and Sita Thakurani would take Achyutananda with them, and they would bring all kinds of special preparations for cooking for the Lord. And they had their own home there. Advaitacharya had a house he would stay in there. And so they would arrange all these incredible meals to cook and invite Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come. And being overwhelmed in that original Vatsalya Prem that Sita Thakurani felt, she would again serve the Lord with her own hand, just like this was her young child, in this way. So In this way, we can see this wonderful mood that Sita Thakurani had for the service of Sachimata, service of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. And this is just a little glimpse into some of the pastimes of Sita Thakurani, a very small little glimpse, but an idea of some of the things that we can think about and remember as we go through this week. Now, I had also mentioned that this is tomorrow is the appearance day of Lalita Shaki, and I want to close by reading Rupa Goswami's Ashtakam, our 8 prayers in glorification of Srimati Lalita Shaki, who's the eldest of the gopis and the best of the gopis, he describes. She is famous as Radharani's constant companion and her most devoted follower. She's a very hot-tempered person and very contrary by nature, and this comes out in many of the pastimes with Radha and Krishna, particularly where she's always staying on Krishna's case for the way he deals with Srimati Radhika. It mentions that her complexion is yellow like Gorochana, and that she wears garments that are colored like peacock feathers. Very, very beautiful to see, I'm sure. And her service is to offer and prepare betel nut and pan for the divine couple. So I'm going to read the translations to Rupa Goswami's Sri Lalita Ashtakam. I offer my obeisances to Lalita Devi, who has many wonderful qualities. She worships the perspiration of Shri Shri Radha Mukunda's lotus feet and acts boldly out of intense feelings of friendship for them. I offer my obeisances to Lalita Devi, who has many wonderful qualities. Her face defeats the beauty of the ambrosial corona of the full moon. Her eyes are like those of an alarmed deer, and she is expert in the art of decorating Sri Radhika. I offer my obeisances to Lalita Devi, who has many wonderful qualities. She wears a wonderful silk dress colored like peacocks with outstretched feathers, as well as a nice choli, and her complexion defeats the golden splendor of Gorochana. I offer my obeisances to Lalita Devi, who has many wonderful qualities. She teaches Sri Radhika the art of a left-wing heroine, saying, Radha, firmly reject that shrewd son of the king of Braja. O immoral girl, listen, do not be weak. I am saying this for your own good. Do not submit to him. I offer my obeisances to Lalita Devi, who has many wonderful qualities. Her eyes become red with anger if she sees the son of the king of Braja cheating Sri Radhika even slightly. Then she will promptly embarrass him with her clever words. I offer my obeisances to Lalita Devi, who has many wonderful qualities. She is the abode of the affection of the queen of cowherders, Jasoda. She is the teacher of the art of friendship for all the Shakis, and her love for Sri Radhika and Krishna is equal. I offer my obeisances to Lalita Devi, who has many wonderful qualities. She requests every girl in Braja to join the party of Vrishabhanu's daughter and fulfills all the desires of that girl, Sri Radhika. All her desires are fulfilled at once when she sees on the path Sri Radhika in Braja. I offer my obeisances to Lalita Devi, who has many wonderful qualities. She always enjoys the festival of Radha and Brajendra Suta's meeting, and she is the chief of all of Radha's dear girlfriends in Gokula. Anyone who recites these prayers praising Lalita's wonderful qualities with a pure vision will be lovingly counted amongst her own friends or maidservants by Sri Radhika, the brilliant desire vine of the family of the Lord of Kirtida, King Vrishabhanu. So, wonderful meditation. So we're going to close here this evening. Once again, it's a special blessing on me that I can return with this program on the histories of our Vaishnavacharyas. And I want to reach out once again and thank all of you out there listening who are supporters, and encourage you that if you enjoyed this or any of the programs that are on Krishna.com, that you show your support. I can guarantee you that your donations will be put to good use. So let's see what we have here. A couple of questions that came up. Bhakta Jeff, Bhakta Scott, one, let me see here, was asking about the source of this. Kremlin 69. The stories I was telling this evening come from many different places. Bhakti Ratnakar, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Mangala, Advaita Prakash, Gauragona Desha Dipika. There's many different literatures that we have compiled these pastimes from. Those of you that are familiar with my broadcasts know that we research a lot of these different areas like that. And there's some discussion about the podcasts that are available. If you spend a few minutes looking through the Krishna.com website, you'll find lectures and podcasts by many different devotees. You'll also find video presentations, lectures of Srila Prabhupada, as well as different sannyasis, lots of kirtan, all of the books of the Bhaktivedanta Book Truster available on Krishna.com as well. You can read them. It's really, really wonderful to take the opportunity, and we all have many websites we go to and just kind of know where we're going on them and go to them and leave. But take a little time, browse through Krishna.com and find out all the wonderful things they do. If anyone else has any other questions they'd like to put in the chat room here, we'll be happy to take an attempt to answer any of these. We do want to thank all these devotees that have joined us. And I appreciate your encouragement. While I was on sabbatical during the summer, I did get various emails and messages on Facebook from those of you that have appreciated these programs. And I want to thank you for that encouragement. It keeps me going. It's nice to know that people are there besides just this camera that's in front of me. That's one of the wonderful things about the chat room, is that it's a nice way to see some exchange back and forth like that. So, if no one else has anything, we're going to finish there. I'm going to ask for all of your blessings, that we can continue on like this, and that we will see you again next week on another episode of the Lives of the Vaishnavacharyas. Hare Krishna.